Chris Graham here for Trailblazer RV. Take you through an RV orientation on this 2018 KZ Connect 261 RL. Starting right here at the front of the trailer, where you've got your propane and battery systems. To access the propane valves, you can open up the flap on the top of the cover, or just remove the whole cover to access the bottles themselves. You've got two 20-pound propane bottles. Both of these are full right now with an automatic switchover propane regulator. You can see the sight glass on that regulator showing red, that there is no propane flowing from the supply bottle. If I open that valve, that sight glass turns from red to clear, showing that propane is flowing. And what we recommend is opening both valves so the regulator will deplete the supply bottle first and then automatically start to pull from the reserve bottle. Once that happens, the sight glass will turn back to red and you can switch the regulator over, remove the first bottle to go and refill it without ever shutting down your propane system. Behind the propane bottles is your battery. It's a 12-volt deep cycle RV battery with two leads going to it, red to positive and black to negative. This is a flooded wet cell battery, so it does require a little bit of maintenance. We recommend once or twice a year removing these two caps on the top and just checking the level of fluid in the cells beneath the caps. If the fluid looks a little low, and especially if there's metal plates sticking through, you'll want to add some distilled water to top it up and put a good charge on the battery. We also recommend removing this battery for winter storage, storing it indoors somewhere where it's not going to freeze, and if possible, putting a trickle charge on the battery once over the course of the off-season. In your front storage compartment, you'll find your 30 amp power cord. Many of the sites you visit will have 30 amp power, and for those that don't, we supply a 15 amp park adapter. Right here is your fresh water system. So you'll fill your fresh water tank from here. This just gravity fills right into the tank. Recommend using one of those white non-toxic drinking water hoses for that. And if you're at a site with power or with water hookups, you can hook directly up to the city water right here. If you're hooking up to the city water connection, we recommend using a water pressure regulator to ensure that you don't over-pressurize the lines in the trailer. This black panel here opens up for access to your water pump. The water pump has a siphon kit already installed on it, so when you go to winterize the RV, you can pump antifreeze directly from this siphon line through all of the water lines in the trailer. To do that, you'll have to open this valve and close the valve going into the water tank. Right here is where you'll hook up that 30 amp power cord, and another hose connection here as well. Don't confuse this one with the city water connection. This is a sewer tank flush. So when you're dumping your black holding tank, which you'll do from right here, you can hook up a garden hose to that to spray out the inside of the holding tank. When you go to dump your holding tanks, the sewer hose will connect right here. We supply a new 20-foot sewer hose. It's stored in the rear bumper right now. So hose connects right here, other end goes into the ground, and you've got two valves, your larger black valve and smaller gray valve. Always dump the black first, that's your sewage, and while that is dumping, you can have your hose turned on to use the tank flush system. Once that tank is empty, you can close this valve and open the gray valve to dump your gray water. This will also kind of use that gray water, sink and shower water, to flush all of the sewer contents out through that hose, so there's nothing left in the hose when you have to disconnect it. Once that's finished, close the valve, disconnect the hose, store it back in the rear bumper. Your fridge vent is here. You can remove this panel to access the back of the fridge if you ever need to, but for the most part it's just for ventilation. The fridge needs a little bit of air movement in the back to work properly. Here around the back of the trailer is where your spare tire is mounted. It's worth mentioning that the trailer doesn't come with a jack or a wheel wrench, so it's probably worth checking to make sure that the wheel wrench your truck has fits the lug nuts on this trailer in case you ever do need to change a tire on the side of the road. The cargo rack, just pull the two pins from each side of the cargo rack to fold it down. Cargo rack is rated for 250 pounds, but that includes the weight of the tire and rim, so about another 200 pounds on that cargo rack. Here on the camping side of the trailer, you've got your furnace exhaust. This gets very hot when the furnace is running, so make sure that if you've got kids around the RV, they know not to touch that, and it's probably not a great place to set up the table under your awning. And your hot water tank here as well. The hot water tank can run on electricity or propane. To run it on electricity, you'll need to turn this black rocker switch to the on position as it is now, and there's a second switch inside that will need to be on as well. There's also two black reset buttons on the outside of the tank. If the tank ever overheats, you'll have to come out here and press the reset buttons before you can get the tank started again. Mostly that only happens if you ever accidentally start the tank up with no water in it. This is also where you'll drain the water from your hot water tank by pulling the plug from the bottom of the tank. It's a 1 1/16 inch socket, and on the end of that plug is a rod about that long. It's your sacrificial anode rod. The purpose of the anode rod is to corrode over time to prevent the inside lining of the tank from corroding. It does get very pitted and corroded looking after a few years, and probably after 3 to 5 years, depending on the water quality, it'll need to be replaced. We sell them in our parts department, and they're around 20 bucks, I think. Before you remove that plug, you'll want to use the water pressure regulator. The water pressure relief valve to bleed the pressure off of the hot water tank so you don't get sprayed when you remove that plug. The water pressure regulator does something completely different. Here at your running gear, your tires are inflated to 65 psi, and we do recommend running them right at 65 psi, and if you forget that, it's stamped right here on the sidewall of the tire, 65 psi cold. We've also torqued your lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds, and we recommend with a towable RV periodically retorquing your lug nuts and also repacking your wheel bearings. This one's equipped with Easy Lube axles, so if you remove this center cap, you'll find a grease zerk in there that you can use to grease your inner and outer wheel bearings with a grease gun. That doesn't eliminate the need to repack your wheel bearings occasionally, but instead of doing that every year, as long as you're giving them some new fresh grease occasionally, maybe you repack wheel bearings every 3 to 5 years. The awning on this model is the Solera Smart Arm awning, so it can be controlled from the outside or the inside of the RV. To use the outside controls, press and hold the unlock button until the green light comes on, and then extend the awning like so. The awning extends 8 feet, and you don't have to bring it out the full 8 feet if you don't want to, or if there's a tree or another RV in the way, you can stop it at any point. And this one is also a height adjustable awning. So once it's fully extended, you can lower one side down to control where the rainwater runs off. To do that, just pull down on this lower arm. We recommend before you put the awning back in that you put both sides back up to the full height, just to ensure that the awning fabric rolls up straight on the roller tube. This awning also has the optional motion sensor for the awning light. There's an awning light the entire length of the canvas, and with the motion sensor enabled, anytime it senses motion in your campsite, that light will come on. This one also has the wind sensor upgrade. So there's 3 different settings for the wind sensor, and as long as you have that wind sensor enabled, if the wind picks up to a point where the awning starts flapping around too badly, it'll retract all by itself. Inside the front storage compartment, you've got a couple of jack crank handles. One to manually crank your power front jack should you ever need to, and you can do that by removing the cap on top of the jack to use the crank handle. And the second one for your 4-corner stabilizer jacks. When you get to the campground and parked and relatively level, crank these down to be snug with the ground, but you don't want to actually lift the trailer with them. They're not for leveling so much as they are for stability. You can see this one has our trail pack in it as well, so a lot of those essentials that you're going to need, water pressure regulator, water hose, sewer toilet chemical, that stuff is all included in the trail pack. To extend your entry door step, grab underneath the bar with 2 hands, slide the first step out, roll the second step, flip the third. So flip, roll, slide. Come on in and I'll show you a few more things inside the trailer. So right next to the entry door is where we find the control for our awning and slide outs. So to run the slide out, we just press and hold the out button. The slide extends 3 feet. It's an electric rack and pinion slide mechanism, so it drives from the bottom, and you'll see when it gets all the way out, it'll just kind of cinch up at the bottom. Once we hear a ratcheting sound, we know it's all the way extended. Just like so. Once you hear that sound, you can take your finger off the button. A couple more switches here near the door. One is for your main entry lights. One is for your LED accent light, and the third is for that LED awning light again. From the outside, you can control the intensity of that light. There's 3 different settings for intensity. From the inside, it's just simply on or off. Here in the kitchen, you've got a 3-burner gas stove top. All 3 of these burners can be lit by the sparker. And always recommend, anytime you've had your propane system disconnected, if you've replaced a bottle or refilled it, when you reconnect your propane system, the first thing you should do is come in here and just light all 3 of these burners. Once you've got the burners lit, you know you've bled any air that might have been in the propane system off the lines, and you'll have no problem with your automatic appliances, your fridge, furnace, and hot water tank. For your oven, it does have a pilot light. It's the only pilot light in the RV to worry about. So to light the oven, turn it over to pilot on, push in on the pilot knob, and you'll have to manually light the pilot here with a barbecue lighter. Once you see a flame, continue to hold in on the pilot knob for 10 or 15 seconds for the thermocouple to heat up, and then you can turn the oven up to temperature. Once you're finished using the oven, you can turn it back to pilot on and just leave the pilot burning, or turn it all the way off and simply relight it next time you need to use the oven. The fridge is an automatic gas electric fridge. And what we recommend is just turning it to auto and always running it on auto. On automatic, if it has electricity available, it'll run on electricity, but if it loses power, it'll sense that and automatically switch over to gas. You can override the automatic function to only run on gas, and you might find that the fridge cools a little bit faster on gas than it does on electricity. Having said that though, it takes several hours to cool a RV fridge down. So we recommend, if it's possible, starting the fridge cooling the day before you load up to make sure that it's nice and cold by the time you load the food into it. This one has a temperature setting, 1 being the warmest, 5 being the coldest. I usually set it on 3 or 4 to start, but you might need to adjust that based on the ambient temperature. This style of fridge also has a lock. The lock is not to lock the fridge closed, but to lock it open. When you put the fridge into storage, by using that lock, it still allows some air to flow through there and you don't get the mustiness in the spring when you open it up. Right here is your thermostat. So this controls both the heating and cooling systems for the RV. For the fan and cooling settings, you'll need to be plugged into 110 volt power for that. That's air conditioning and air conditioning fan. But when you are using the air conditioning or the air conditioning fan, you can set the fan speed to low or high and set it to automatically come on with the thermostat or just always stay on. With the heat, if we turn that over to the system over to heat, turn the thermostat up to a temperature we're comfortable at. The furnace fan starts up immediately, but it's going to be a few seconds before the DSI spark kicks in and we hear that burner light up. There we go. If you could hear that in the video, the burner is now operating, and in a few seconds we would have warm air blowing from our vents. Once the system comes up to temperature, or you shut it off, same thing happens, only in reverse. The burner has gone out immediately, but the fan's still going to run for another 30 seconds, up to a minute, just to go through its cycle. Below the thermostat is where you'll find your propane leak detector. So this will actually do 3 things. It will alert you to a propane leak. However, if there was a propane leak in the RV, you would almost certainly smell the propane before the alarm went off. This is also a combination carbon monoxide detector, so it could alert you to a carbon monoxide situation, in which case you wouldn't smell anything. And the third and most common thing that this will do is alert you to a low voltage at your RV battery. If your RV battery is very low, this will alarm just like a smoke detector does when its battery is reaching the end of its life. You do have a smoke detector as well. The propane detector is wired into the RV's electrical system. The smoke detector is not. So you'll have to check this 9-volt battery occasionally to make sure that it hasn't gone dead. Just press and hold the test button until you hear a beep to ensure that the battery hasn't gone dead. Your stereo system is AM, FM, CD, DVD, USB, auxiliary, and Bluetooth. And there are 2 speaker zones. Zone 1 is interior speakers, Zone 2 is exterior speakers, and especially where this one is the DVD player as well. If you're ever watching a DVD, make sure you've got your Zone 2 speakers turned off so that the rest of the campground isn't listening to your DVD as well. Below that is your power converter. This is the power center for the entire RV. So we can open that up to find access to all of our breakers and fuses. You've got primarily 15 amp fuses in this one with a couple of 40 amp. So it's not a bad idea to have some spare fuses available. It's not uncommon in an RV to blow a fuse. If you have some spares, it won't be a big deal if you have to change one at the campground. Here in the bathroom, you've got your monitor panel. this is where you can check the level of your battery. You can see it's completely charged right now. Fresh tank is completely empty, black tank empty, and gray tank empty. You've also got 3 switches here under the monitor panel. This is where you'll activate your water pump so that you can pump water directly from your freshwater tank. You can also activate your hot water heater on electricity or propane gas. If you're going to use the water heater on electricity, remember there's that second black rocker switch on the outside of the tank that also needs to be on. If you're going to run the tank on gas, you turn it on and the DSI fault light comes on, indicating that the burner is not burning. But just like the furnace, if we give that just a second, we should hear the DSI spark and that burner light up. Just like so. So now the tank is heating on propane. It'll take about 20-25 minutes to bring that tank all the way up to temperature. Right here is a notable power outlet. This is your GFI outlet. So just like the ones in the bathroom of your home with a test and reset button, only difference in an RV is this is wired in series with several of your other power outlets. So if you do trip your GFI, you'll lose power at all of your outlets. If you're ever plugged into power and wondering why your outlets don't work, come into here, push the reset button, and it'll reset that whole system, that whole circuit. Whenever you're using your RV's sewer system, you want to make sure and use a good potent RV toilet chemical. It's available in powder, liquid, or tablet form, and any one is fine. Whenever you add chemical, add it right into the toilet bowl, and make sure to put some water down with the chemical. You can push halfway down on the foot flush to fill the bowl with water, and then the rest of the way down to dump the whole works into the tank. That chemical takes a little bit of water to activate it, so always make sure whenever you add chemical that you put some water down with it. And you'll want to add new chemical immediately after every time you dump the holding tanks. Here in the master bedroom, not very much to take you through in here, but you do have an emergency exit window. With this style of exit window, it can be propped open for ventilation just by pushing out on the handle. And if you do need to use it for an exit window, just use the red tab to pull the screen out. The window can hinge all the way up. I always recommend that you practice that a few times, just because the mechanism is a little tricky to use, and in a panic situation it might be a little hard to use. The only other thing that we haven't shown you is where to find the bypass valves for your hot water tank. And the hot water tank in this model is right in the corner under the kitchen counter. So you can see on the water inlet at the bottom a white valve, and the water outlet at the top a white valve. If you close both of those valves, it'll divert the water, or antifreeze as it may, up from the cold water lines through the bypass tube and out through the hot water lines, so you can winterize both your cold water and hot water lines without filling that water tank. You can certainly winterize the RV yourself, or you can bring it back to us and we can do that for you. And I think that pretty much covers everything. Hopefully you've learned something about the 2018 KZ Connect 261RL. If you ever have any questions, you can always get a hold of us here at Trailblazer, or you can check our website, trailblazerrv.com. Thanks for watching.